But you can see there, that's the new bedroom they have. And so they slept off the kitchen, which is exactly what my parents did when I grew up in a kind of a two-bedroom, a two-room house growing up. So it reminded me a lot of what I grew up with. But the point is, you can do whatever works for you in your company. But moving to the other side of the arrow, the servant leadership side, I just wanted to touch upon a couple of the principles, because I think if you walk away with one thing this morning, this is what I hope you walk away with, is that what we base servant leadership on is love. And it's right out of 1 Corinthians, and we're very open about it. But it's not love like you think about it. In America, we always think about love as an emotion, as eros love for the Greek. But we treat it as agape love, which is a Greek word that's really a verb that's about behavior. It's not about feelings. And I love this quote by Vince Lombardi. Great football coach, very tough guy. Every players were fearful of him. But he said, I don't necessarily have to like my players, but as a leader, I must love them. Love is loyalty. Love is teamwork. Love respects the dignity of the individual. This is the strength of any organization. And like I said, that was Vince Lombardi. But if I'm just going to take a moment to read you this passage out of 1 Corinthians. And instead of thinking of it as a wedding, like Paul does, or it's often read at a wedding, think of somebody at work that you have a little difficulty with. Maybe you don't get along with, or somebody maybe at home that you don't get along with. But just think about this. Can I apply it? Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It's not proud. It's not rude. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrong. It doesn't delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. So what we did is we took those 8 words and we summarized 1 Corinthians 13 with 8 words. It's patience, kindness, honesty, humility, selflessness, respectfulness, commitment, and forgiveness. And we teach that to our leaders. And we ask them to love their fellow employees. And I know that seems crazy to some of you, but we do it because, first of all, it was Jesus' number 1 commandment. When he was asked what's the number 1 thing, he said, as you know, love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. But it's also because business is all about people. And I think you would all agree with that. And people are all about relationships. And really, relationships are all about love. So, again, if there's one thing I want you to think about leaving is, why should the Christian principles of loving each other go away when we go to work, when it works so well with my spouse or with my family and my friends? And we live by the basic principle that the enthusiasm of the guest experience is never going to rise any higher than the enthusiasm of our own employees. So if we can love them and nurture them and make them enthusiastic, they're going to do the same thing for the guest. So I'm just going to hit quickly a few of the words to give you a feel for it. Patience is one of them. It's not about being patient with bad performance, so don't think that. We are very performance-driven. But we want to maintain the dignity of others. And the basic principle is to praise in public and admonish in private. And one of the worst experiences I ever had in business, when I was running Saab North America, we were on a tremendous track, 2-year success. We had grown sales about 60%. But we missed our number 1 month. I got a call on Easter Sunday from my boss in Sweden, who ran Saab worldwide. He ordered me to come over that day. I flew all night, as you know, that European trip over, had meetings all day Monday, and basically just got my rear end ripped all day long. And it was a very humbling and humiliating experience. And really from that day, I was open to leaving. I didn't quit physically, but I started taking the headhunter calls, and I emotionally detached. And that's probably happened to you at some point in your career, and you know how that made you feel. And I vowed I would never do that to somebody. I've read people the riot act, but I've done it in private, and I've always encouraged in public. Another example is the word kindness, which is not about always being nice, but what it is about is showing appreciation for people's effort. Let me ask a question. How many of you in this room have had too much encouragement in your life? Let me just see. Come on. Too much. You just feel overly encouraged every day. There's enough in life to beat us all up every day. And our owner, Jack Herschend, taught me, a CEO should be a chief encouragement officer. And he taught me that through his actions. One great takeaway that I've learned from him, he starts every day, the first 20 minutes, thinking about yesterday and writing handwritten notes to his employees of what he's seen that encouraged him. And all of you are probably kind of A-type people. You're always trying to take the next hill. Well, you also need to thank people, and that's what Jack taught me. Those handwritten notes are like gold in our company. I'll just hit a couple more here, and then I'll close. But honesty, obviously, if you're deceptive and you cheat, you're out, you're fired. But what we talk about in our company is being truthful with each other, being honest about performance. And when you're trying to, one big fallacy or one big problem with servant leadership is people think you always have to be nice and they're not truthful about people's performance, and that causes problems. People have to pull their own weight. And so we really focus on being truthful about people's performance. And I think it's the greatest gift you can give an employee. And I know when I look at the best bosses I've ever had, they were the ones that challenged me and made me better. Selflessness, I think that goes without saying. That's thinking about others more than yourself. We did one thing I was going to show some pictures of. When it flooded in Katrina and they had those huge floods in Louisiana, we actually volunteered our duck boats that are amphibious vehicles, and you can see we took our logos off it. It wasn't to get promotion, but we went down there. FEMA called us and asked for help, so we did it. And you can see we've rescued a few people there. And there's a zillion examples I could give you, but it's just an attitude that it's not just about you, it's about a much broader picture. And then finally, commitment. It's really easy to talk about servant leadership when things are going really well, but when the numbers aren't there and things are really stressful, and a lot of you and a lot of us are in very stressful situations right now with this economy, sometimes it's hard to keep it going. But we try to show commitment to what we're about. For one, we always give a servant leadership class. Any new supervisor goes through this, and we give this statue of Jesus washing Peter's feet. But we're really clear, because we have non-believers, we have quite a few Jewish people working for the company, a lot of agnostics, maybe a few atheists, not sure. But we say we do not care what you believe, but we do care about how you behave. And we do model our principles after Jesus. And you may debate who he was, but you can't debate that his leadership style was incredibly effective with those that he led. The other thing we do, we try to put our money where our mouth is. This is the 2x2 matrix. It's not overly complicated, but on the vertical axis is the numbers that all of you are measured by, and me too. Are you hitting your budget? Are you hitting your numbers? The horizontal axis, though, is are you hitting the values? And if you're doing it in the right way, according to those 8 words, we give you the best raise in the upper right-hand corner. You're a high. If you're a low, you're probably going to be seeking employment elsewhere. But and we do let people go and have done that. But we try to put our money where our mouth is. In the middle of the arrow, I'm not going to spend any time on, other than to say, on the stewardship part, Herschend Entertainment actually had the best financial performance of any of the competitors than Six Flags and Cedar Fair. We have better returns, less debt, and we've paid dividends every year through this recession. So I don't want you to walk out thinking, well, you know, it's easy to do this stuff, but it all costs money. It does, but we get great performance, and I still think you can do it in your own company. So to wrap up, the key principle for me to try to communicate to you is that it is up to you. I do hope you leave knowing that you can have an impact in the workplace. You can practice servant leadership principles, whether you're a supervisor, the CEO, or not. And those 8 words I talked about, you can live those in your daily life at work. But I also wouldn't want you to leave thinking, you know, I painted the positive side. There's a whole other side every day. I mean, I have had people who took advantage of our grace, and we tried to give them a second chance, and they took it the mile, and we eventually had to part ways. I've had leaders who worked for me, 2 of them, both alcoholics, both had to be demoted. One of them made a tremendous recovery and came back and is working for the company, doing a great job. In another company I worked for, I did the same thing, handled it the same way. The guy was depressed, he was an alcoholic, and he committed suicide. And he had 2 young kids. And you know, how do you handle that when you go to the funeral and you talk to his widow after you demoted him, and this is what happens? We create a lot of great memories worth repeating. A month ago, 2 of our customers were killed in Philadelphia in an unbelievably tragic duck accident. We were basically run over by a barge while we were anchored and helpless and without motor. And I have a hard time sometimes finding where God is in that, but there's also been some tremendous stories that have come out of it. So I wouldn't want you to leave thinking it's all rosy. I'm on my knees every day. The recession's been tough. Our numbers are down. We've had to cut a lot of expenses to just keep our cash flow. But I keep going back to those 8 words. You know, what is servant leadership? What am I here for? Can I have an influence? Can I have an impact at work? And the answer is you can, no matter what your position. And I don't think it has to be inconsistent with the way you want to treat your spouse and your kids. I think they work in both spots. So I hope that in some ways been encouraging to maybe one of you. I will say Priority Associates does a great job of having programs in place to help you take those next steps to try to figure out, how can I have more strength in the workplace to be a Christian in the workplace? How can I share my story? How can I have more confidence in that? How can I build relationships at work? And so to have you hear a little bit more about that, I'm going to turn it over to Shan, and he's going to share some things about Priority Associates. But thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.